Hi, good evening, everybody. It is Monday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Andre Anderson. I'm both host and founder of BSTL. So I hope you've been doing well. And of course, as I always say at the beginning of every one of our segments, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with anybody that you know would love to hear about or be a part of these conversations about leadership. I want to jump right into it today. I'm excited. I have a wonderful guest, and you're going to be hearing from her in the next few moments. And I want to make sure that I pronounce the name properly because she likes her name to be pronounced properly. So I'm going to do that. Alethia O'Hara Stevenson, welcome to the BSTL podcast, and it stands for Building Something That Lasts. Are you there, Alethia?
Amazing. Thank you for the warm introduction, Andre.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here. We met a couple of months ago, and I knew that I just had to have you on the podcast. So thank you for being here. And I know that there are tons of people, like I wish that everybody would know Alethia. There are tons of people that know you, but there are a few people that may not know you. And so before we get into our conversation today, would you mind maybe sharing two things about you that are not going to get you incarcerated?
Two things. Okay, let me share something personal. I am a mom of three and a wife, of course, and I am the founder and president of the Dufferin County Canadian Black Association, an organization that was established to lead, advocate, and empower our Black communities in the Dufferin County region. So you asked for two, there you go.
Oh, nice. Now, where's the Dufferin County region? Tell us that as well, if you don't mind.
Yes, so if you are familiar with Brampton, we are about 45 minutes north, straight up Highway 10 of the Brampton core. So straight up Highway 10, 45 minutes north of Brampton.
All right, so that means for those that don't have gas money, they'll just have to listen to you, and those that do have gas money, they'll have to take the drive.
So absolutely, the scenic drive to Shelburne.
And it's nice out there, by the way, and really. Just for context, we're in about 13 countries now, and so when you share where you are and where you're doing this wonderful work of engaging the community and so forth, it gives some of our listeners an opportunity to get to know a little bit about our province and our city here in the GTA. So, Alethia, we want to have a conversation today about how is it that we get the best out of our employees as a leader. I want to turn it over to you and let's get started. How do we get our best? Where do we start?
Wow, it starts with you as the leader. It starts with how you show up. And what I like to describe leadership as, it's the art. It's something that is fluid and it changes, but it's the art of impacting and influencing others who may be following you. And when I think of leadership, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a title of CEO or manager. You can lead in your everyday lives. If you're a mom, if you're a teacher, you're leading families, you're leading individuals. But it's that job of impacting and influencing them and getting the best out of those who you are leading. So if we put it back in the corporate context, how you show up as an individual makes a world of difference. If you're showing up to work and you had a bad morning and you're reflecting that in the workspace, your employees are going to feed off that. That negative energy, that upset feeling that you have, your employees are going to read that and they're not going to want to perform. So it is in your best interest to take that cleansing breath, take that moment, and you put on that smile. Whatever you need to do in that moment, I like to do my dance of joy just to make sure that I am getting in that positive frame of mind. Whatever works for you, do that to make sure that you're showing up into the space of work in a positive frame of mind with the best intentions and the best energy. That's the first principle in leadership, how you show up.
So, all right, fair enough. And because as I'm getting to know you, I know that you're a very positive person. Like, that's just who you are. But how do we, like when you say show up, leaders are coming from different contexts, right? So not everybody's happy. Not everybody is in the optimal spaces in their own private life, and the list goes on. are there some intentional things? And I hear you saying the dance, right? You have a happy
Yes.
dance that you do. But how do I get into that framework? Because the truth is, even if you love your job, and your responsibility of leading people, not every single day do you always want to be there, because that's just life. So
Mhm.
how do we set that posture? How do we create that environment so that every single time, regardless of how we're feeling or not feeling, it's going to happen in the right kind of way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to share an idea that an amazing mentor of mine has shared with me that I've started to implement. And it's when you're changing location, whether you're leaving home to go into your workspace, no matter what is happening, before you set foot in that door, you need to take a moment and pause and disconnect. So separate the two worlds. And for me, what I've been doing is I mentioned the dance. It could simply be a moment just to meditate for yourself, right? It could be a moment where you're reading something inspiring. It could be
Mm-hmm.
prayers, whatever it is that will work for you to be able to set the tone and the intentions for that day is what you need to do. And you have to be purposeful in it. And I have bad days. We all have bad days.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to now remember that I need to have an impact on the staff that I'm leading. And so I
Mm-hmm.
need to take that moment to just pause
Mm-hmm.
and separate the negative that may have happened on my drive to work
Mm-hmm.
and set the tone for the day by doing my happy dance. And the happy dance doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do some bold, fantastic move. It could be something in your head. It could just be a jig that you do on the spot. Whatever it is that works for you, right? Sometimes people will think I am nuts because, I am there with my earpods on and I'm bobbing away to the music, but
Mm-hmm.
that is how I get into that mode and I start to set the intention for that day. If I wake up in the morning and I'm in a bad mood, I know that if I don't change that,
Yeah.
it's gonna set the tone for the day, and the rest of the day is just going to go downhill. So I have to consciously make an effort, purposefully make an effort to think positively and to get into that positive frame of mind.
So it also sounds like, and I agree with what you've said, by the way, but it also sounds like, in terms of how you are leading, that even though you may be leading a group of individuals, it also sounds like you are the type of leader that has a personal touch, that you have with each person that you are leading. What does that look like, right? Because you've got your introverts, your extroverts, your phlegmatics, your cholerics. You've got all kinds of different personality types, and plus life happening. How are you able to lead a group and lead the individuals simultaneously?
Yes, another great question. The first thing is get to know your employees, understand what motivates them, understand individually how they want to be treated, right? So you mentioned the introvert. The introvert may not be the person who wants to be celebrated and be in the spotlight, but you may have that extrovert who loves the accolades, who loves to be in the spotlight in team settings. They
Mm-hmm.
want to celebrate all their accomplishments and their birthdays. Once you get to know your employees on an individual basis, then you can provide them with the right level of, I won't say treatment, but the right level of engagement and interaction that they want to receive. And so for me, one of the things that I have been doing in my leadership journey, even in this virtual world that we live in,
Mm-hmm.
I connect with my employees
Mm-hmm.
every single morning, whether it's virtually through chat programs.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning. How are you?
Mm-hmm.
How is the family?
Mm-hmm.
That simple connection before you even talk about work.
Right.
How are you? If I am in the office environment, it's the same thing. That 15 minutes, however long it takes, it adds a significant value to employee engagement because you're connecting with that individual first. You're getting to know them. You're checking in on them on their well-being
Mm-hmm.
above and beyond work. And studies have shown, I've actually done research on this, where the employees have shared how much they value that interaction because it creates a culture of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
It makes them feel seen, valued, and heard. So again, understanding how the employees want to be treated and treating them as such with that respect in mind.
So I want to pivot a little bit, because I'm also thinking about the difficulty of connecting. And maybe here's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
There are some that like the connection part, almost too much. So now you've asked, hey, Andre, how are you doing? But Andre's an extrovert. And Andre loves to come to work, but guess what? While you enjoy the human interaction between yourself and myself, maybe I'm not performing as well, right? So if you have to do the survey, they'll say, great, Alethia, best leader I've ever worked with, but I'm not performing well. How do I balance that? How do I make sure that while I'm getting to know you, that I'm still getting the best out of you? Because not everybody comes to work for the exact same reasons.
Yes, another great question. And so that is where I like to look at the different leadership styles to be able to get the best out of your employees. So that employee who may not be performing optimally, that's where I'm going to have to put specific action plans in place. And so understanding that an individual's work style and engagement, I may have to do a democratic type of leadership style with them. We're negotiating, and then we're setting up some accountabilities. We're setting up some metrics and goals for them to meet, and almost like an action plan. So once we have that established, we have an agreement in place, then we work towards meeting those goals individually. If that's not working, I may have to go towards a transactional type of leadership where it's, this is what needs to be done. This is the date that it needs to be done. Go forth. And some employees thrive in that environment where they need to be task managed, right? But as a leader, you have to know the different leadership styles that will work for the individuals on your team.
So, okay, and I love where this is going, by the way, but I'm going to ask the obvious question, right? So some of what you're saying may or may not be contingent on the size of your team, right? So if you have a smaller size of team, maybe 5 people or less, that type of coaching, it looks different. But if you are managing groups of people, like I think of executive directors and managers who literally have maybe 40, 50 people, that sounds like a lot of time. How are you going to find the time to do your work while managing and leading these people all at the same time?
Fantastic. And so if you are at a director level, as an example, you may have a manager that is reporting directly into you. And so not necessarily 40 direct employees, it may be less. And so that's where you leverage your managers and make sure that your managers are now equipped to downward manage the rest of their team. And so I think it is still feasible. I've seen the evidence of it where leaders are responsible for a small segment of their overall employee base. And that's where that leadership style will come into place. One of the things that I've seen working well is at a director level or even a VP level, you may not have those opportunities to connect with every employee on a weekly basis, but it's in your best interest to connect with them maybe on a quarterly session, 15 minutes check-in, right? But it's not necessary to provide that specific coaching because you're not in the details with them. You're not seeing their daily metrics. That information is being filtered up through your direct manager. But that quarterly check-in is pivotal in making sure that your overall employee engagement continues to increase and thrive. And so that's the differentiation. So if you've got a small team, absolutely, that weekly check-in, bi-weekly check-in works well.
Yeah.
If you're at director level and you've got 40, 50, hundreds of people reporting to you, you don't have the capacity to do weekly coachings, but you have the opportunity to do check-ins quarterly, semi-annually, whatever that basis is. And it could be in a group setting where you're just having people come together just to share, but it's not to specifically coach. It's just to check in.
So I love this conversation, by the way, and now I'm going to push it a little bit further. Because here's one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, and we have to talk about it now. Now, there are some assumptions that I make based on what you've said so far, and that being most of the individuals that we're talking about in terms of getting the best out of them, they are agreeable. They are desiring to work with you. They understand the mission, the vision, the objectives that have to be fulfilled. But we also know that there are some individuals that will fight you tooth and nail on every level, no matter what the goals are, no matter what the objectives are, the benchmarking. There are some people that, look, they don't want to work with you.
Absolutely.
How are you going to, and the reason why I'm asking that question, a friend of mine, he asked me that question not too long ago, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll get a better answer from you. But what are we doing with individuals that don't want to be their best? How are we helping them as well?
Yeah. And so you need to find out what motivates them. So oftentimes, they have issues that is happening in their personal lives. There, issues happening that is outside of work that sometimes you may need to step into that realm and offer them additional support through whatever corporate resources that you may have. That's one of the best solutions I would recommend. And once you understand what motivates them, then you can work together to come up with a solution that will generate results. Yes, not every employee will be happy. If it's a personal issue, as a leader, you need to now learn how to separate that personal issue versus actual work goals and accomplishments that need to be generated. Right. So not everyone will like you, as a leader, but you still have metrics and goals that you need to meet as a team. And so how are you going to work towards getting that? And it's focusing on the goals, the visions and missions of the organization, as opposed to you don't like me, Alethia, as your manager. Right. That's totally separate.
Yeah.
Right. How that employee wants to be treated and what motivates them to work is pivotal again in understanding how you can get the best out of those employees. Take away the personal.
So, all right, you've done everything, right? And I know that you are a type A personality based on some of the conversations we've had. I know that you are detailed oriented. And in one of my previous podcasts, we were having this part of the conversation. And the question then is, what happens when you've done everything that you can? Right? And nothing seems to be working, Alethia. Like you've done the one-on-ones. You've gone out for the coffee breaks. You have had lunch with them. You even have the sticky notes that you leave on their monitor or, the text messages, whatever. You have done it all, Alethia, and no change.
Now it's time for an action plan. Now it's time for those courageous conversations.
Okay.
And those courageous conversations will center around, these are your goals and objectives. Week after week, month after month, you have not been meeting them. These are some of those crucial next steps. You need to meet X by X date or else.
Okay.
There are negative consequences, right? Oftentimes, they shape up. But there are situations where you've had to let employees go. I've had to let individuals go because they simply were not performing optimally. Right. But that's after you're taking significant steps to make sure that you're helping them to achieve their goals. You're helping them to succeed. They also have a vested interest. Right. But if as a leader, you can't articulate, what those goals are, then you failed them as an employee and you failed them as a leader.
So because you've had to let some people go, and maybe this is a part of the transparent part of our conversation. Like most times we as leaders don't want to admit that we fail, right? It's not easy to swallow that because you're in the corner office, you're the one doing the month-end reviews, the quarterly reviews. You've done everything that you can, and you've let some individuals go because they're not working well based on what is required. In those moments of reflection, since you've had to fire some individuals, have you ever made a mistake and fired somebody and thought about it further and realized, no, this one was on me, and because, they were the object lesson of me not necessarily being optimal with them, I have failed them?
Good question. I don't recall a situation like that, but I'll pivot and change to a situation where I've actually hired an employee and I've actually had to let that employee go, but I wasn't able to provide the right coaching to integrate them into the team.
Okay.
And as a result, I still was not able to provide sufficient coaching to help them to succeed in their role. And so that was one of my early leadership lessons in how could I have improved the coaching and the environment so that this employee could thrive and succeed. And I don't know if, had I done all of the right things, all the things that I know now, if that would have helped the employee. Hindsight is always 2020, but that is one of the situations where I've reflected back on and said, perhaps I could have done, a better job of integrating them within the overall team structure and provided more coaching and guidance to help them thrive in their role. And I just didn't do that.
Oh, wow. And I think in those moments, it's tough, right? Because I think it works well when everyone complies or they conform or they come already motivated and ready to do what they have to do. But we know, like you said, because people have lives outside of their jobs, and some people are not as transparent and they may not always share. And so while you think you are butting against somebody who is stubborn and whatever, no, right now they've got somebody that is in palliative care and they just don't want to talk about it because we don't do that in the office.
Exactly.
But maybe further to this is this, right? Because as leaders, sometimes our blind spots are we don't collaborate enough with our colleagues that are working on the same level. How do we make sure that we are getting the best out of ourselves so that we can give it to others? Like, what should the support look like, especially when these difficult conversations have to happen and maybe it's a little bit over your head because you've never dealt with that kind of personality type? How are you working with others around you to also make sure that you're successful while leading people?
The best example I can give is my own personal ongoing coaching learning journey, right? So even though I'm a leader, I still have mentors that I connect with. I still have career sessions that I participate in, and educational courses and workshops. So my journey as a leader is ongoing. There's constant learning. Things evolve all the time. So those are some of the things that I've been actively doing. The mentorship, I think, is key. Building your network is key. And that's something that I recently learned through one of my mentors. The feedback was, you need to actively reach out and connect with different people across various platforms. And that's how you stay ahead of the game. And that's how you get people talking or speaking your name positively in a room when you're not there, because your network is broad.
Yes.
And when you're connecting with those individuals, it's more than just having a coffee chat. Coffee chat is absolutely important, but it's having meaningful conversations where you're both benefiting from that interaction.
So I like that. And I was going to ask you that. I have it here in my notes, but I want to push a little bit more with this part of the conversation, right? And we're still talking about getting the best out of your employees. Are you networking with people that are in a similar vocation, or are you just networking with leaders, period? Right? Because maybe I should say this, right? I think that the Achilles heel of leaders, especially when they are really doing well, there's a tendency to network with people that are in a similar context. And so because you do a similar work, you want to know how other people are doing things. When I was a younger leader, I agreed with that. But now that I'm getting older, I'm realizing that sometimes there's a benefit in having a conversation with other leaders that have no idea what it is that you do. And so the objectivity is there. How are you doing the networking thing?
Oh my gosh, great question again. All the gems this morning. So networking is broad. For me, it absolutely has to be broad, because you need that diversity of thought and creativity and all of the great things that comes with having diverse people in your roster. And so when I'm networking, it's not necessarily networking as well with people of the same level. I could be networking with someone who works at Tim Hortons as a cashier.
Right.
Because there's so much knowledge and wisdom that you can gain from that individual. I'm in an environment where there are individuals that are just graduating from university, that are half my age, quarter my age, right? But they're bringing a fresh skills to the table, creative thinking to the table that I'm able to leverage and utilize in my day-to-day life. So if you sit in a room and you're only networking with like-minded people, you're going to be stuck in a silo. You're going to be missing out on so much richness and learning that comes from having a diverse set of people around you. So it doesn't matter if you're in the financial sector, if you're in the nonprofit sector, if you're an entrepreneur, it is incumbent on you to go out and network from a broad spectrum of people. And I know your next question is, how do you network?
How do you know? How do you know? Yeah, sure. That's my next question.
Amazing. For me, it's, simply having that conversation. I mean, you and I, we met at a conference and it was simply hello.
That's right.
So you start the conversation with that simple introduction and you build that relationship. You check in with the individual, you say hello and, have meaningful conversations around family, the things that light the other person up. And then you share a little bit about your background and experience. The other avenue that is absolutely fantastic for networking is LinkedIn, right? That's what that tool is there for. So reach out to somebody that's in a different industry than you, right? And say simply, hello, would you like to have a virtual chat? I would love to learn more about your background, your profession, whatever it is that individual is doing that interests you. Start with that. And people generally like to talk about themselves, right? People generally love to share their knowledge and experience. And so I haven't come across a situation yet where someone has said no. They may have pushed back to say, at a later date, but I haven't come across a situation yet where it has been no.
One of the things I appreciate about you, Alethia, and everything that you've said is the way that I experienced you. But then I want to add one more component to this. I think one of the gifts that you have, or at least one of the things that you have decided to be, is also one who connects people who may not be connected. And I think that that's important because sometimes these connections that we make with people, it's just an instantaneous moment and we don't get back to them again because life is happening. But I think if we're committed to helping people grow and be their best as we lead, we also have to connect people even when they're not asking to be connected, to ensure then that this thing, in principle of communicating and helping people to grow, it's happening organically. So how did you get to that place? Why is it that you are so open to sharing your resources around you? Where does that come from?
Wow. I think my philosophy is there is room at the top for everyone to succeed and to thrive. And so it's not taking away anything from me to share. And so when I share my resources with others, it's in the hopes that goodness will continue to spread, right? I am benefiting from something fantastic. And perhaps, somewhere down the line, somebody else will reach out and say, hey, Alethia would be good for this event, or Alethia would be, fantastic for something. So, and it may not necessarily be directly to me. It could be something, a connection that is extended to my family, right? I just believe in that goodness. If you give goodness out, it will come back to you somehow, somewhere. So, and again, at the heart of all of this, there is room at the top for all of us to thrive and succeed because we're all unique beings. We all have something special that we bring to the table. So it's not a matter of Alethia competing against Andre. No, Andre has something special and unique about him. Alethia has something unique and special about her. We both can be in the same playing field, but we bring something unique.
So let me throw a curveball to you. What do you do when you've now poured out and given the best to those that you're coaching and leading and mentoring, but they've now outgrown you? What are you going to do there?
Celebrate. I think my job my job would have been done, right? And I think it's a moment of success. And I've seen where individuals have thrived and surpassed me, but that connection is still there, right? If opportunities come up, they're going to reach out and say, hey, I think that, this is an opportunity for you. So to me, it's a win-win. Like, I haven't come across a negative situation where someone has outgrown me and they've completely turned their backs.
Right.
Not for the wood, let's hope that's not, I don't ever run into that situation, but I think it's a win-win. And if for whatever reason that person has outgrown you and the relationship has severed, perhaps it has served its purpose, right? There's a time and a season for everything. So let it go and move on.
So, Alethia, this has been a great conversation. And by the way, I know you're always busy, but you're going to have to make time because there's a part 2 that I didn't get to today. I won't even tell you what it is. But I would like to, as we wind our conversation down, can you consolidate everything that we've discussed? What is the takeaway that you would like for our listeners to know based on everything that we've discussed today?
Wow. So if I could condense it, it would be, as a leader, you need to take stock of how you're showing up before you can even engage your employees, before you even dive into work. Take stock of how you are showing up yourself as a leader. The second component is check in with your employees, understand what motivates them and how they want to be treated in the workplace or in any environment. Once you understand how employees want to be treated, then you can optimize their performance by simply checking in, by simply saying, hello, how are you, before you dive into the work.
Wow. Now, Alethia, I want to do this. I should have done this at the beginning, but I missed it on my notes. I know that you are on different platforms and you are sharing and facilitating conversations and interviewing. Would you mind, and I'm also going to put it in the subject area when I share this to LinkedIn, but are there some websites or YouTube spots where people can find you? Because I'm certain that having had this conversation, there are going to be some people that are reaching out to you in a different type of capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. So my preferred contact page would be LinkedIn. So Alethia O'Hara Stevenson on LinkedIn. But if individuals are interested in hearing more about some of my interviews, they can find the links on Rogers TV YouTube channel titled In Conversation with Alethia. And that's where I sit down with amazing leaders from different environments, just sharing their journey, their experience in leadership.
Oh, wow. Incredible, Alethia O'Hara Stevenson. It has been a joy to have you on our podcast today. And I hope and know, because I'm going to put the pressure on you, that this will not be the last time. Here on this podcast of BSTL, we're building something that lasts. And really, we're not just building leaders, we're building potential leaders. We're building the generation of tomorrow as well as we're building today. Because the reality is, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of people have become leaders not because they're optimal, but because they've been at an organization for quite some time. And there are things that we learn that we need to unlearn, and then there are things that we don't know that we need to learn. But when we are building something that lasts, it means that we're open to being coached, to being mentored, and definitely having the difficult conversations. Alethia, thank you so much for coming on. And I know that this conversation is going to be a blessing to somebody who needs to know that we have to show up, and not just show up the way that we want to be. We have to show up in a way that is advantageous to those that are needing us to be optimal. So if you haven't liked or subscribed or shared, please make sure you do so. Thank you for listening. And again, build something that lasts wherever you are leading. Bye for now.